everything changes in a matter of seconds in the National Football League. One snap, one decision, one calculated risk. Honestly, that can be the difference between a dynasty and an absolute disaster. Look, when you have a franchise quarterback playing on a rookie contract, you are thrust into the most precious, fragile window in all of professional sports. Every single season you fail to maximize that financial advantage is a season permanently lost to history. You don't get do-overs in this league. Welcome to NFL Nexus, your home for the most immersive, deeply researched explainers in the game. If you want to understand the true pulse of the league, and I mean really understand it, hit that subscribe button, like this explainer, drop a comment below on what you think about today's breakdown, and support the channel by becoming a channel member today. Because today, we are looking at a franchise standing on an absolute razor's edge, the Houston Texans. They are staring down the barrel of the 2026 season with everything on the line, and the front office has engineered a massive, high-stakes offensive overhaul. And let's get one thing straight. This isn't just about changing personnel. It's about changing the entire physical identity of a football team.
So, how do you fix a broken offense in one offseason? I want you to think about the absolute gravity of that question for a second. In the modern NFL, patience is a luxury literally no one can afford. When your offensive system collapses, you don't have 3 years to draft and develop a solution. You just don't. You have months. Sometimes you only have weeks. The history of this league is littered with teams that tried to take the slow route. Just look at the mid-2010s Indianapolis Colts. They failed to fix their rushing attack and offensive line in a single offseason, and it ultimately derailed the prime window of a generational talent. The Texans brass looked at the wreckage of their previous campaign and realized that minor tweaks simply wouldn't save them. They couldn't just patch a hole. They needed a surgical, aggressive intervention to keep their championship window from violently slamming shut.
Section 1. Fixing a broken ground game.
Okay, let's dive right into this, because to understand the cure, you have to truly understand the disease. And for Houston last year, the disease was a catastrophic failure in the trenches. We were talking about a ground game that didn't just underperform, it completely deteriorated from the inside out. Look at the metrics from the 2025 season here. They offer cold, hard proof of a failing system. Total rushing yards, near the absolute bottom of the NFL. Rushing touchdowns, again, near the bottom of the league. But that third metric on the board, early down consistency, that right there is where the true nightmare lived for this coaching staff. Let me break down why that specific failure is so incredibly toxic for a football team. When you are severely deficient on early downs, like when you run the ball on 1st and 10 and you only pick up 1 yard, or maybe even lose a yard, your entire playbook shrinks instantly. You're constantly facing 2nd and long, which quickly bleeds into 3rd and long. And in those scenarios, opposing defensive coordinators simply pin their ears back. They literally do not have to respect the run. They deploy zero blitz packages, or they sit back and heavy cover 2 shells, completely blanketing the secondary because they know you have no choice but to pass. Your offensive linemen are suddenly put on islands against elite pass rushers, and your quarterback is put in a completely unwinnable situation. And you know what the most shocking part of this is? They had names in that backfield. They handed the ball to Nick Chubb and Woody Marks, expecting absolute dominance. But instead, they got an inefficiency that paralyzed the entire offense.
Which brings us to the harsh reality of the 2025 Woody Marks experiment. Now, don't get it twisted, Marks is an incredibly talented athlete. In fact, our source material notes he easily earned a spot as a top 25 player on this entire Houston roster. But talent doesn't always equal scheme fit, right? The Texans tried to force him into a role he just wasn't built for. They asked him to be an every-down bruiser, and the result was an underwhelming average of less than 4 yards per carry. We really need to look closely at the physical toll of what that meant on the field. The Texans were taking a dynamic, space-oriented athlete and slamming him directly into stacked defensive boxes. Marks was routinely met in the A-gaps by 320-pound nose tackles and downhill linebackers looking to take his head off. He struggled with the sheer physical attrition of absorbing 20 to 25 violent collisions a game. Naturally, he battled injuries, and his explosive burst, which is far and away his greatest asset, was just ground into dust by the time the third quarter rolled around. It became painstakingly clear to the front office. Woody Marks is a dangerous, explosive pass-catching weapon and a fantastic change of pace back. But asking him to carry the heaviest burdens between the tackles against modern odd-front defenses, that is a guaranteed recipe for a broken offense.
Section 2. The David Montgomery Gamble.
The realization that their ground game was fundamentally broken forced the front office into a dramatic, high-speed pivot. They knew they couldn't just waltz in the free agency and throw a massive, crippling contract at a top-tier running back. The salary cap consequences of that would have been absolutely devastating. Overpaying an aging star on the open market means absorbing heavy guaranteed money and dead cap space, and those are resources they desperately need to retain their elite defensive core and extend their young, ascending receivers. So instead, they went into the war room and executed a highly targeted, high-stakes trade. They picked up the phone, called the Detroit Lions, and shipped out a 4th-round pick, a 7th-round pick, and offensive lineman Juice Scruggs. By NFL standards, giving up a mid-round pick, a late-round flyer, and a rotational lineman is incredibly shrewd mathematically. It secures a veteran runner who can completely reshape their physical identity without mortgaging their financial future. And this brilliantly illustrates what our sources are pointing out. David Montgomery brings precisely what this Houston backfield was missing. He is the heavy-duty hammer that allows Woody Marks to be the lightning. By bringing in a runner capable of handling the punishing, gritty reality of the lead role, the Texans are desperately hoping to elevate this rushing attack from the bottom of the abyss back to at least league average. Montgomery isn't just another player to them. He is the missing puzzle piece required to unlock the rest of the playbook.
But there is a massive, looming shadow over this entire transaction. 29. Now, in the real world, 29 is young. You're in your prime. But in the National Football League, for a running back who plays a violently physical style, 29 is walking the absolute edge of the cliff. The inherent tension here is undeniable, and the history of the league is unforgiving. I mean, we have seen countless dominant running backs hit their late 20s and seemingly lose their legs overnight. The compounding impact of absorbing thousands of NFL collisions over a 6-year career fundamentally alters the human body. The explosion off the line of scrimmage diminishes. The ability to break that first tackle wanes. Houston is literally betting their immediate future and their quarterback's prime window on legs that have immense mileage.
Section 3. Strengths, Weaknesses, and Risks.
We have to strip away the front office optimism for a minute and look at the clinical, documentary-level facts of what David Montgomery actually brings to the field in 2026. What are the true strengths, the glaring weaknesses, and the catastrophic risks of this move? When analyzing Montgomery's profile, we find an extreme contrast. On one hand, he possesses the unquestionable traits of a champion. Montgomery has elite vision and incredible contact balance. He is a remarkably smart runner, your prototypical goal line back who knows exactly how to lower his pads, manipulate leverage, and guarantee those brutally hard yards in the red zone. Plus, he is an incredibly underrated pass catcher. He's logged over 300 receiving yards in 3 of his last 5 seasons, which is crucial because it keeps defenses honest on passing downs. But stripping away the highlight reel reveals some glaring vulnerabilities. He completely lacks home run explosiveness. If he breaches the second level of a defense, he isn't going to outrun a safety for an 80-yard touchdown. That's just not his game. His style relies on being a bruising, punishing force who actively initiates contact. And when you combine a playing style that literally seeks out collisions with a 29-year-old frame, every single hit compounds the risk of a season-ending breakdown. It is a high-reward but incredibly high-risk profile.
Yet, if you look at the historical data, the resume is undeniably resilient. I mean, before 2025, Montgomery put together an Iron Man streak of 6 consecutive seasons with 1,000-plus scrimmage yards. That is no small feat. He has averaged over 4 yards per carry in each of his last 4 campaigns, and crucially, he meticulously protects the football. He has never had more than 2 fumbles in any single season. In a league where late-game turnovers single-handedly decide who goes to the playoffs and who goes home, that kind of ball security is absolute gold for a head coach. He even managed to play all regular season games in 2025, but we must acknowledge the dark cloud from that 2025 season. Last year in Detroit, Montgomery experienced a career low in touches and scrimmage yards. Why? Well, because the Lions unleashed Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs' explosive, game-breaking speed simply outclassed Montgomery's grinding style in the modern Lions offense, effectively reducing Montgomery to a situational battering ram. The Texans, however, are banking heavily on a very specific narrative here. They actually believe this lessened workload in Detroit preserved Montgomery's body. They're wagering that taking fewer hits last season wasn't a signal of his inevitable decline, but rather a temporary rest period before shouldering a massive primary burden in Houston.
Which leads us to the most terrifying reality for the Houston coaching staff, the depth chart dilemma. What happens if David Montgomery gets hurt? It is a scenario that Texans desperately want to avoid acknowledging, because if Montgomery misses significant time, this entire offense instantly regresses to the nightmare of 2025. Behind Montgomery and Marks, there's a severe, precipitous drop-off to Jahar Jordan. And Jordan is a player with stark limitations at the professional level. He lacks the physical mass to consistently push piles in short-yardage situations, and more importantly, he's been viewed as a severe liability in pass blocking. If your backup running back cannot diagnose a blitz and protect your franchise quarterback, he cannot be on the field on third down, period. The depth simply isn't there to sustain a bruising ground attack. If their 29-year-old Gamble fails to stay healthy, the floor completely falls out from under this offense.
The absolute ideal scenario for the Houston Texans relies on maintaining a fragile, highly specific touch distribution.
They want roughly 65% of the workload going to David Montgomery and 35% going to Woody Marks. When you have David Montgomery taking the heavy, grinding volume as the true RB1, taking the violent punishment between the tackles, something fascinating happens to the defensive alignment. Linebackers have to step up into the gaps. Safeties are forced to walk down into the box. By absorbing that physical toll, Montgomery essentially creates a protective tactical shield around Woody Marks. Marks is then freed up to return to his natural state, a highly explosive complementary weapon. You can motion Marks out wide, match him up against a slower linebacker in coverage, or utilize him on perfectly timed screen passes. When this 65-35 distribution holds up, it completely weaponizes Houston's play-action passing game. The offensive flow becomes unpredictable, dynamic, and incredibly taxing for an opposing coordinator to defend.
Section 4. Houston's secret weapon. But look, a rushing attack alone doesn't win you a Super Bowl. The front office knows that to truly overhaul this offense, they need an X factor. Another layer to the puzzle that defenses simply won't see coming. An under-the-radar player whose unique skill set can unexpectedly and drastically elevate an entire offense's ceiling. Our sources point directly to a player who has a compelling, undeniable case to be exactly that for Houston in 2026. Tight end Brevin Jordan. To understand why Jordan is the skeleton key for this offense, you have to look at the evolution of the tight end position in the modern NFL. We have seen how players like Travis Kelce and George Kittle completely warp defensive coverages. They aren't just extra blockers, they are oversized wide receivers who exploit the seams. While opposing defenses are stacking the box to deal with the bruising downhill force of David Montgomery or tracking the explosive perimeter movements of Woody Marks, the middle of the field suddenly opens up. And this is exactly where Brevin Jordan thrives. If a defense plays cover 3, dropping their safeties deep, Jordan can attack the soft underbelly of the zone. If a defense plays man coverage, Jordan creates an instant physical mismatch against slower, heavier linebackers, or he can simply overpower smaller defensive backs. He has flashed brilliant run-after-catch ability in the past 2 seasons, and with the defensive gravity focused so heavily on the revamped backfield, Brevin Jordan has the potential to become the unexpected spark that burns a defense alive over the middle of the field.
Section 5. The ultimate ceiling. So, if the meticulous planning, the targeted trades, and the strategic touch distributions actually play out perfectly, what is the ultimate ceiling for the 2026 Houston Texans? Honestly, it all comes down to a razor-thin balancing act. Let's meticulously unpack the absolute keys to this campaign. First and foremost, the offensive line must hold up. They are the foundational shield of this entire experiment. You can have all the talent in the world in the backfield, but if the trenches collapse, the season collapses. An aging running back like Montgomery cannot survive being hit 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. The interior lineman must create vertical displacement to give Montgomery a clean runway to the second level. Second, David Montgomery must completely defy the traditional NFL age curve. He must reclaim his status as a true RB1 and deliver a highly efficient 800-plus yard campaign. And notice I said efficient. It is not just about total yards, it is about efficiency. He needs to consistently turn 2nd and 8 into 3rd and 3, keeping the offense mathematically ahead of the chains. And finally, they must rely on what made Montgomery great historically: 0 mistakes. The entire offensive unit must limit turnovers, maximize the complementary mismatched roles of players like Woody Marks and Brevin Jordan, and dictate the tempo of the game rather than just reacting to it.
The margins for error in the NFL are practically non-existent. One injury in the trenches, one step lost to age in the backfield, and a front office's master plan turns to dust. So I leave you with this. Will these calculated high-stakes risks forge a true championship contender in Houston? Or will the harsh, inevitable realities of age, attrition, and injury violently slam their championship window shut forever? Thank you for diving deep with us today on This Explainer. If you appreciate this level of detailed, structured analysis, make sure you subscribe to NFL Nexus, like this video, leave a comment with your prediction for the Texans season, and consider becoming a channel member to support more premium breakdowns just like this one. Until next time, keep your eyes on the details.